Hi everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal Zone TV. I want to thank you all so much for being here tonight, and I want to say hello to those in the chat room and to my two mods, Renee and Chipateri. Thank you so much, and my fabulous guests tonight. The guests are Serenity Jenny. She is Jen has a master's in education, National Certified Counselor, Licensed Professional Counselor, and Registered Massage Therapist. She is an author, she is a psychic medium, she is an ordained minister and spiritual healer, celestial shaman. She is the author of Unapologetically, let me find Jen's book, Unapologetically Authentic, and CEO of Starburn Illuminated Publishing. Jen channels a special type of Hashi healing method. She's energy medicine channeled directly from the stars with the assistance of ascended masters and angels of the Most High and the beings of light and galactic liaison for the councils of 12. And her book can be... you can buy her book on Amazon. And now, also, if you want to schedule a virtual reading with Jen, you can contact Serenity Jenny by calling or texting 725-953-9733 or 724-953-1931 to schedule. Also, my other guest is Drew Beeson. Drew is a true crime researcher. Hold on for 1 second. He is a true crime researcher, and he is also an author. He has written 5 books, but 2 of the books tonight we'll be talking about will be the sighting of the Zodiac Killer and the Paratrooper of Fortune, and that is the book that he wrote on D.B. Cooper. Now, Drew has these books on Amazon, but you can also go to his site, drewbeesononbooks.com, to purchase these books. He also has a fabulous YouTube channel, True Crime and Missing People, and he is on the YouTube, so you can contact. I have the links down below in the video, so you guys can go there. So I want to welcome my 2 guests that are my favorite of all times, Drew and Jenny. Thanks so much, you guys, for joining me tonight and for doing this show. Now, Drew, I can't say enough about Drew. He is so knowledgeable, and of course, Jenny is one of the top psychics around. We're going to discuss this topic tonight because Drew and I did do a show on D.B. Cooper. And Drew will go through these, but these 2 cases are amazing because I don't think they're ever going to be solved. Now, Drew may have a different opinion on this, but these are 2 top cases and the FBI is baffled by D.B. Cooper. So we're going to talk about these 2 cases, and Jen is going to see if she's going to use her psychic abilities to help us maybe find out who they are, who they were, and what happened to them, and maybe give a little insight on their background if she can pick up on that. Excuse me. So with that, let's start with the Zodiac. Go ahead, Drew.
Place to start. Sure. Like you were saying, Zodiac Killer and D.B. Cooper are 2 of the all-time top unsolved American cases. Just those are the ones that people pick up on the most. The ones that people want to solve the most are the 2 of the most popular throughout time. They're both now over 50-year-old cases each. The Zodiac is probably hands down. It's considered the American Jack the Ripper because we've never identified who the Zodiac Killer was. Just like Jack the Ripper, we still don't know. But the crime started in December of 1968 December 20th of 1968 was the first what we call the canonical Zodiac crimes, because there's 4 what we call canonical crimes, which are mostly attributed to the Zodiac Killer. Then there's some other murders that happened, such as the murder of Sherry Jo Bates in Riverside, California, is what we call a non-canonical crime. So what I try to focus on and giving the background, I'll just talk about what we call the canonical crimes. And like I said, started December 20th of 1968 at a place called Lake Herman Road in Benicia, California, near Vallejo. A young couple was shot by a perpetrator. They were on their first date. There was Betty Lou Jensen and her date was David Faraday. They were 16 and 17 years old, respectively, and they were shot to death on what was described as a lover's lane. And they were pretty much killed instantly. Betty Lou was killed, shot in the back as she tried to flee. David held on for a little while, but he was never able to give a description of his killer, and then he passed away. So unfortunately, we don't have any description from the attacker from that particular crime. Several months go by. It's July 4th of 1969. Another couple is attacked on a lover's lane in at a place called Blue Rock Springs in Vallejo, California. Just a short drive from Lake Herman Road. The couple is attacked. It's a lady named Darlene Farron, and she's with her friend Michael Mageau. And a man drives up behind them. He gets out of his car, and he walks over to the passenger side where Michael was sitting with Darlene, and he starts shooting into the vehicle, hitting Michael. Some of the bullets go through Michael and hit Darlene, and she winds up dying on the way to the hospital. Michael miraculously survives that attack. He's able to give somewhat of a description of the attacker. It happened at nighttime, right before coming into midnight, going into July 5th now. He after he's shot, he kind of flings his body in the back of the car, and the killer comes back out and fires again at him a few more times, trying to finish him off, but he doesn't. He miraculously survives. Gives a description of the killer. Said he's a stocky guy, around 5'8" or so, and that's all. He was a white male. That's about all he could say. That's all he could really offer. So a few more weeks go by. On the date of September 27th of 1969, another couple is attacked at a place called Lake Berryessa, not far from Napa, California. The couple is laying. It's daytime attack. It's the first daytime attack by the Zodiac Killer. It's a guy named Brian Hartnell with his an ex-girlfriend named Cecilia Shepard, and they were college students at the time. And they're laying out on a beach towel, and an attacker walks up wearing this hooded costume. That's the famous picture you see of the Zodiac. He's wearing this ceremonial-looking executioner's hood, and he has a cross circle logo like the one on my shirt, across this black, what looks like a dicky or an overlay, covering his face and covering his chest. And he has that mark, which is called the Zodiac, the mark of the Zodiac, what we call the cross circle logo. And the man walks up. He doesn't identify himself as the Zodiac. He produces a gun, and he says, "I just want your money and your car keys." And they think they're just going to get robbed, so they comply with him. And they're Brian says, "I don't have much money on it, but you're on me, but you're welcome to it." He doesn't take the money, and he winds up tying them up. And they don't know why he's doing that. They try to protest, don't do that, but he winds up tying them both up. He had actually had themselves tie each other up. He had Cecilia tie Brian up, and then he kind of made sure the knots were tight. He made them both lay on their stomachs, and then he proceeded to stab Brian in the back, and then he moved over to Cecilia and started stabbing her in the back, and Cecilia would wind up passing away from her wounds 2 days later. Brian survived, so he's the second survivor now of the Zodiac Killer, and he's able to give the description. That's how we know that he was wearing that black, executioner's-looking hood with the cross circle logo on it. And he engaged him in some conversation, so he kind of remembered his voice to some extent. So they did get some basic descriptions from that, but like I said, his face was covered, unfortunately. One thing they did remember is they could see brown hair coming through the eyelets of that mask. Both Brian and Cecilia both said that they could see brown hair coming through the eyelet of the mask, which is really important because I don't think this attacker would have been wearing a wig in that kind of situation, but that was just an important detail that they remembered. So the fourth attack now is going to be against a cab driver. His name was Paul Stein. Happened in downtown San Francisco, California, October 11th of 1969, so not far after that date. Paul Stein, who's a 29-year-old married cab driver, just making some extra money while he's going to college, picks a man up in a particular part of San Francisco near the streets of Mason and Geary. He gets the fare. The man gets in the back seat. He takes him up to the Presidio Heights neighborhood in San Francisco, very wealthy neighborhood. And he gets to the streets of Washington and Cherry, and then the man pulls out a 9mm gun and he shoots Paul Stine in the right side of his head, right above his ear, killing him pretty much instantly. There's blood everywhere, and the person that shot him gets out of the cab, and he's seen by some kids across the street wiping the cab down. And that's where you get the famous sketch of the Zodiac Killer. It came from a family of children named the Robbins, were their name. The oldest was a boy named Lindsay Robbins, who I think was 13 or so at the time. He was the one that could, saw the man wiping the cab down. So they were the input of the description that's the famous sketch of the Zodiac Killer. And it was later amended after a police officer saw him as well, and he kind of looked at it and said, yeah, that's pretty close. And so they did amend that sketch. That's basically based on the input of young kids from across the street at nighttime. So we don't know how useful that sketch is. Not long after the cab driver is shot and killed, letters show up containing a piece of the cab driver's blood-stained shirt that was ripped from the tail piece of his shirt, and little swath from his shirt was mailed with these letters. That's how the Zodiac was trying to show for 100% that he was the attacker of Paul Stine. So those are the 4 canonical Zodiac crimes. Of course, he wrote taunting letters to the police. He also wrote what are called ciphers, which are coded messages. There was 2 of those that had a particular link to them, and the first one was called the 408 cipher because those are the amount of characters in that. That cipher was broken not long after it was sent by a couple, a school teacher and his wife, Don and Betty Harden. And they just kind of figured out what words the killer would use, like kill or an I. They figured he'd be egotistical. So they solved that cipher pretty early on. And then we had the only other cipher of length was called the 340 cipher for 340 characters. And that was solved just 2 or 3 years ago. It took over 50 years to break, and it took 3 guys did it. A guy from America named Dave Baranchek and 2 team members, another guy named Jarl van Eck in Belgium, who was a computer scientist, and then a mathematician in Australia named, I can't remember his name right now, but it was a team of 3 guys, really smart guys. Sam Blake was the name of the guy in Australia. 3 really smart guys, and finally uncovered that code of the 340 cipher, but unfortunately did not reveal the killer's name. The Zodiac always taunted that he would put his name in one of the ciphers. He actually had a short cipher called the My Name Is cipher, which according to experts like the 3 guys that broke the 340, they said that cipher is too short to be broken because there's so many possibilities to it. So all we have now with the Zodiac is letters that he sent. They attempted to get DNA off of one of them and had a partial profile, but now we have no confidence in it because it was from an unconfirmed letter that was sent in 1968. So that's kind of where the case stands. It's still unsolved despite what you see in the news or what a group of sleuths come up with. There's a famous movie about the case in 2007 by director David Fincher called Zodiac. It was very popular, based on a book by Robert Graysmith. And that was probably the height of the popularity of the case, but it still remains probably the top unsolved American mystery of all time of who the Zodiac Killer was.
Drew, when was the last communication that the police had with the Zodiac? Do you remember the date?
The last confirmed piece of communication from the Zodiac is what's called the Exorcist letter, where he claims that he had seen the movie The Exorcist and said it was the best satirical comedy he had ever seen. He quotes some lines from a Gilbert and Sullivan play called The Mikado that we know that the Zodiac liked. He liked to quote The Mikado, which of course was an English play from the late 1800s. And that's the last confirmed letter that was called the Exorcist letter that came, I think that was January 1974. That's considered the last time that they could confirm they heard from the Zodiac.
Okay, so Drew, what do you think? I know you sent me a picture. I sent it to Jen because I wanted her to see it. And I have the picture of who you feel is the Zodiac. Would you like to, should we start asking Jen if she can pick up who this fellow might be and if that image is correct? Or should we go into the why and what this was all about. What would you like to do? What would be the best
Whatever you
thing?
think. I'm good for whatever.
Do you want to see first if we can find out who he is and then find out why the heck he did all of this? Okay. All right.
Yes.
So, all right. So I'm going to show you a picture that Drew sent to me. Now, Drew, go ahead and you can talk about this image, Lee Cheney. Go ahead, Drew.
Okay, I'm not seeing your screen, so I assume you got that picture.
Yeah, I put the picture up of who you sent me, who you think is the Zodiac Killer.
Right. Yeah, I do. That's a picture of Donald Lee Cheney. It's from around 1975 or so. Of course, this is after the last canonical Zodiac crime, 1969. You can see he's got brown hair. You can see he can grow it kind of longer in the middle. That's why I go back to Lake Berryessa, because he would grow his hair like that. He was balding. He had a widow's peak hair because he had been balding for probably since the early 60s. And ironically, one of the police officer named Donald Falk, who saw the Zodiac in the Presidio Heights right after the attack of Paul Stein, said he saw a man that had widow's peak hairstyle. He described him as barrel-chested. Donald Cheney is absolutely what you would describe as barrel-chested, but that's a picture of him from 1975. He was involved in this case since July of 1971, when he came forward with a story about his close friend Arthur Lee Allen being the Zodiac Killer. So Don Cheney, no matter what people think about him, and he's well known in Zodiac lore, forever changed the case of the Zodiac because he brought forward the prime suspect in Arthur Lee Allen by saying, hey, my friend told me back in 1969, January 1st of 1969, that he was going to call himself Zodiac and he was going to go attack couples on Lovers Lanes. And he even took me over to Blue Rock Springs Park and Lake Herman Road and showed me exactly where he was going to attack these couples. And Arthur Lee Allen famously owned a Zodiac wristwatch that he got from his mother for Christmas of 1967. His younger brother got an identical Zodiac watch. So it's actually a very rare for the logo, the cross circle with the circle with the X going through it, and the name written Zodiac that go together. It's very uncommon. It really only comes together in the modern age in a wristwatch, which the Zodiac watches were they're kind of high-end Swiss watches. They're not quite like a Rolex, but expensive dyed watches, and they weren't really common back then. And Arthur Lee Allen had one of those watches, so it was one of the things that made him look very suspicious when his friend came forward in 1971 and said, hey, my buddy is the Zodiac. You just go look at him and you'll figure it out. Wow. And of course, Arthur Lee Allen was never arrested. They could never find any physical evidence for him, but he still remains the prime suspect in this case, and he was the basis of Robert Graysmith's book, which turned into the blockbuster film Zodiac by director David Fincher, with all-star cast. It came out in 2007. So that's basically the story of Don. And the more I looked into Don, I saw that he had all the attributes of the Zodiac. He had everything that a researcher that dug into it would need to be the Zodiac. He was an avid hunter. He could sew well because the symbol on that overhead was, according to Brian Hartnell, the victim that survived, said it wasn't scrawled on with paint. It looked like it was sewn, done with care. Don made leather sheaths for knives. He was an avid big game hunter. He lots of circumstantial evidence. It's a circumstantial case, but there was circumstantial evidence. Lots of people have been convicted on circumstantial evidence through the years, and unfortunately, that's all we have with Zodiac. And every time someone presents their suspect, they're going to go into the circumstantial evidence, which Don Cheney has a boatload of. And also being tied to Arthur Lee Allen and everything that comes with him as far as circumstantially being the Zodiac, having the watch, living in Vallejo, all these things kind of came together. So that's kind of the story on Don Cheney. And notably about Don Cheney is his story changed multiple times in this case. He first said that Arthur Lee Allen told him all this stuff on New Year's Day 1968. He later moves his timeline up an entire year to New Year's Day 1969 because part of his story was Arthur Lee Allen being fired from Valley Springs Elementary for inappropriately touching children. So he knows he's got to change his timeline. So we do have documented instances where Don Chaney has either flat out lied or changed his story. So this is what brought him to my attention. And of course, he, like some serial killers do, he inserted himself into the case as early as July of 1971, when it was still a young case. The letters were still being written in 71, and they kind of stopped for a couple of years and started again in 1974. And that's kind of the whole thing with him in a nutshell.
Okay, Jen. So, give us your insight on this.
Okay, so of course I'm getting flooded. I'm jotting down notes because as you're talking, in a cold read, I'm just seeing, like, I ask spirit to show me, I ask my guides and angels, so this is what I would call a cold read, right? Like, I'm just letting whatever come in that wants to come in, right? Including people that have passed over. So I feel like I'm getting, like, bird's eye perspective from viewing that scene then at certain places, but I also felt like I was, like, teleported back even in who you think that this man that you think is the Zodiac Killer, and I do have a very high belief that is him. I would probably say 87% of my being agrees that the man in this picture, and I will tell you why. Because I feel like he's possessed by some, and this feels crazy, I know, but you said something that was coming in right as I was receiving the information, like he was a possessed individual, or he conjured things up, or he practiced some kind of witchcraft, Satanism, something like that, to gain power, even maybe as a small child. You were saying the words Jack the Ripper when that was coming in. So it was coming in while you were talking. I feel like, you know, and this is very vast, but, you know, we would have to do some further elaboration into the energy of this to see if that is the same entity, killing throughout dimensional time-space continuum. I know that's really big to wrap your head around, but that's what was coming in. But I also feel like this man had a personality disorder at a very young age, a soul fracture, probably did kill animals. A rabbit is what I saw first, and derived pleasure out of this. And it's a little bit gruesome, but I saw the rabbit getting ripped apart from the rib cage with fingers, like to actually expose the internal organs. So I feel like that was the initiation of whatever entity. I mean, we'd have to go into that a little bit further to see what it is, but it's pretty intense. And the reason that I say I'm pretty certain is because in my mind's eye, I saw him with black eyes, and I pulled that picture up again, and I cannot really tell from this picture the quality of the picture, but the left eye in the picture that you sent me, Noreen, Drew, I think is your picture, it's completely black to me. And I feel like that's it. I mean, I can just feel it, like, oozing out. And the pleasure he derived from, I feel like he didn't like relationships, but really wanted one badly, like craved a relationship, but couldn't stand to see it. And I also feel like where the killings took place, too, when you were saying them, all I could think of is PowerPoints. Like in witchcraft or Satanism, they go to vortices, and these are PowerPoints. Like, I don't know the areas exactly, but I could just tell they were able to amplify the energy of the actual trauma of the I want to say he's capturing souls, and I want to say that's on a high level. So, like, if you saw the movie Nefarious, I haven't seen the Zodiac Killer movie, so I'm not familiar. But the movie Nefarious talks about a man who's on death row who's possessed by a demonic entity. This is kind of similar to that. It makes me feel like that, because I also feel like, and you would have to check this out, I do feel like the killings are in line with the moon cycle. So you're going to see, do you know that?
About that?
Okay, so that's coming in to me as you were talking. If you want to elaborate on that, you can. I have more.
Yeah, I'd like to elaborate on that, because it's really good research is being done now by a friend of mine, Stefan Nyberg, and another researcher named Sperry, that goes by Sperry the Cube, and they are into something that I also believe the Zodiac was interested in, which is celestial navigation. And what Stefan is figuring out, along with the guy like Sperry, is that the Zodiac was trying to line up the dates of the attacks and the locations of them by the equinoxes. The signs of the Zodiac and the equinoxes is what they're really bringing out now, is that it was more important than who he was going to attack as to where and when, to line it up with the Zodiac calendar and the in the vernal equinox, the sun, I can't remember the winter solstice, near, going back to the dates of, like I said, January 20th, and then going, I think Stefan even described why there was such a long wait between December 20th of 1968 all the way up to July 4th of 1969, because he was trying to line it up with the solstices and the celestial calendar.
Mm-hmm. I do believe that is you're going to see that come to fruition probably within the calendar year, I would say. Much more will come out about that. But what we know entity-wise, like on a really high level, and this is just me giving you the information, so I'm not trying to decipher it, I'm just repeating it, right? So the cipher is, let's say high-level language, right? Different language, whatever, how somebody would communicate mathematically, I guess, or when you said it took them really, I wrote the numbers down, 408 and 340. That didn't mean a whole lot to me until I looked at 408 and it was a 12 and 340 is a 7. Like 12's huge significance about the number 12, obviously 12 zodiac signs, things like that, but almost like a rhythmic, again, same type of process through the cipher as with the killing. So you're going to see some correlation with that, almost like people talk about light language all the time. Different beings have different languages. This is an indication of what these very high level cerebral being entity, this guy matches the criteria needed for that to house itself within him, because he's no slouch. He's smart. He has a high IQ, he's high functioning, but he just detests relationships but craves them so deeply. That was a significant thing for him to do that type of killing with couples too. Again, satanic sacrifice, worship, things like that. These PowerPoints are huge significance. The name Agatha, not sure if that is somebody that's mother.
Wow.
Who is that?
You just said the word Agatha?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I
don't know. People say maybe you watch one of my videos though. I don't know. If you just pull Agatha out of the air, that's amazing.
Okay.
Because Agatha Christie. It's Agatha Christie, the writer Agatha Christie, who wrote a book called The ABC Murders. Well, the ABC Murders is, I think she wrote it in the 1930s. Of course, Agatha Christie is English. We believe Zodiac was an Anglophile. He liked, we don't think he's from England, but he liked things that were English, like Jack the Ripper, the Mikado, things of that nature. Somehow he would say Happy Christmas. That's what you say in England. But famously, Donald Lee Cheney, when in an interview, in a documentary called His Name Was Arthur Lee Allen that came out with the movie in 2007, says, he basically does all this under the guise of Arthur told me, because they're the guy they're looking at. And he said, well, Arthur never told me the name of the book, or Lee. He went by Lee. It was his middle name, Leigh. He said, it was all in this little book. And he goes, and he didn't tell me the name, but I knew what the name of the book was. It was called The ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. And then when you read that book, it's got so many things that are similar to the Zodiac crimes, where there's 4 different murders, and they might be, one of them, 3 of them might be just random murders because you're hiding your real target in the middle, and you're just trying to camouflage it all. There's a character in the book that's very reminiscent of one of the victims in the Zodiac crimes, Darlene Ferrin, who was a waitress at a breakfast restaurant called Terry's Waffle House. There's a similar character in Agatha Christie's ABC Murders. And I think that he was influenced by some other Agatha Christie stories as well, but namely ABC Murders. So Agatha, to this case, to me, is Agatha Christie, the writer.
Wow.
So huge significance there then to that, right? Again, this is just like a waterfall of information for me, guys. So I'm just pulling in. I didn't know if that was his mother. I didn't know whose name and how it fit. But to me,
it's Agatha Christie.
Okay.
Wow.
I mean, if that feels like it resonates to me. But I'm going to go back to what you said about how he spoke. And so when I tell you that could potentially be the same entity, we're talking entities like non-human spirits. Okay. So personality-wise, you're going to see people that are possessed. And when you said he was kind of entertained by The Exorcist, he said it was a comedy or whatever.
That's the best satirical comedy he had ever seen.
So entities are very taunting. When you exorcise somebody, they will taunt you and they will say, you don't know what you're doing. You can't get rid of me. I'm, ancient. And that is things that we hear. But what we commonly see is that language stays consistent through the lifetimes. Like children who recall their past lives often speak from countries of origin in their last life. I mean, we see this to be present in children all the time that I see personally, but that makes sense that potentially could be the same entity. So I would be interested to see if there was any information or clues within the context of Jack the Ripper as an entity. Again, satanic worship, when you conjuring, things like that, asking entities to come in for power, probably happened between probably 12 and 14 in this man's life. So asking for power, summoning something that was happening within the construct of his life. Not a dad present, or maybe an alcoholic father. I smelled alcohol. I felt like that he struggled a lot. Scoped out areas for extended amount of time too. He very methodical in the planning process. And I don't know, do you guys, I think that's all the notes that I wrote down. I'm definitely watching the movie. I'm definitely watching the movie now because I'm very curious.
Yeah, the Zodiac spoke of collecting slaves for the afterlife. His victims would become his slaves in the afterlife. That's right. But it was one of his rallying cries. The more people he killed, the more slaves he would have in the afterlife. And so that's been studied. We don't know if that comes from Viking culture, or maybe Aleister Crowley kind of spoke a little bit about stuff like that, but we don't know where he took it from or if he even believed it, but it's something that he spoke of. I'm collecting slaves for my afterlife.
That's interesting to me because I can attest to this lifetime. I can't speak to the location because it's private right now. Maybe sometime soon it will come out after the case is closed, but there's a portal that pulls souls in and keeps them, and I actually was involved in liberating one of those souls, one of the spirits of the people that had their life taken in this location. So in my opinion, that is true. That is actually like we'll call it a bullying spirit, right? A higher level entity will enslave lower level vibratory souls to do bidding or work. I wouldn't necessarily say that's just specific to Valhalla and Viking culture. I probably would say that's across the board, like energetically. However many souls you can pull in for an entity will literally fuel that entity. So that's something, as an ongoing case, I have direct knowledge of that happening. So I believe that probably is going to be an indicator that's a high level or a high ranking entity. Let's say it like that.
So he was channeling the spirit.
The spirit was actually, I feel, in him. Okay? And do we know if this man is passed? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
He passed away in 2009. He had been married. He had 2 children.
Really?
Divorced and pretty much estranged from his family early on.
So don't know if we could find this out or how there would be direct knowledge of this. 2 things specifically. One, there's a van, or was a van, that he owned or had. It almost makes me think of a Volkswagen van. One color on top, like a cream color, and then I think like a turquoise or a bluish green on the bottom. He had access to. There was something, some box that he kept. I would say like trophies or something like that in it. In the paneling of the, like I said, I don't know if there's any way to keep track of this. The other thing, I feel like he wore bigger framed glasses, and they were ombre'd in nature, like started darker and got lighter towards the bottom. Don't know if there's any pictures of him like that.
Yeah, he wore eyeglasses, mid-60s up to like 70, and then stopped. But anything past that, we don't know.
Okay. You can ask me questions. Like I said, that was a cold read. That's
no, I like that. If you brought out Agatha out of nowhere, that caught my attention immediately. It's Agatha Christie all day long, because that's something I think he was interested in. Mathematics, was in the military, ciphers, math, mechanical engineering. Cheney was a mechanical engineer. He would have absolutely understood the level of math that the Zodiac was using. But, there's other people that I know that they see a satanic connection, or maybe Church of Satan, or something along the lines of the Manson family. But you're thinking more somebody that was practicing witchcraft or like a Ouija board to summon a spirit that would come into them and make them do these deeds, or
I would say that he had a soul fracture early on from early childhood trauma events from his life growing up. I don't know where the mom and dad were, but it feels like they were either split or there was a huge cavernous wound in him from that interaction with mom and dad. Just detested relationships, but secretly craved them. Like, as a child, didn't get what he needed. Early onset personality disorder. Very aloof person, I would feel.
Oh, very, very.
Extremely intelligent, but not,
very aloof.
Again, craving those connections, but not being able to sustain them for any duration. Interesting that he was married.
Married with 2 children. He seemed by his own admission that he had a lot of what he called friction with his wife. It was very turbulent, which I think they were separated for a long time and eventually got divorced years and years later. But it was, from what I can tell, pretty turbulent.
And as far as like the entity goes, yes, I would say early onset occultism or witchcraft. Either he was exposed to it from somebody else, somebody initiated it, and he fell in love with it basically because it was a means to get power, derive power. Once the connection was made with the entity, I'd be really interested to see if that was the same entity that's Jack the Ripper. I would be very interested in that and see if there's a correlation to see if the same entity came through into this lifetime and did pretty much the same thing, the collection of souls for whatever purpose he intended them to be. I'm saying he, but the entity.
Slaves in the afterlife. Jack the Ripper, it just fits right in because Jack the Ripper wrote letters. We don't know if there was confirmed to have been the real Jack the Ripper, since we don't know who Jack the Ripper was. It's still up for debate, but we know the Zodiac Killer. He was an Anglophile. He liked things that were English, like Gilbert and Sullivan. That's why Agatha Christie fits in so well. Of course, Jack the Ripper, English in origin, and he used phrases that English would use, Happy Christmas, etc. So that Ripper fits right in. And I've always asked if I see an occult overtones with the Zodiac, but after hearing you, I think there's more there than I ever really gave it credit for. In the taunting and all that, it was never anything like directly satanic or overtly satanic that I saw.
I think he liked to keep his power close to the cuff. Like, he wanted to be in the mix. He didn't want to get caught, but he didn't want to be out of the mix either. So he enjoyed almost that cat and mouse little game, so much so that he gave himself a front seat. So I'm certain the entity is kind of deriving pleasure from everybody scrambling at his, the string pulling. So see that a lot too in exorcisms, like different things they taunt and jest. It's very indicative of like a cat and mouse type of game. Like, I have more power than you do type of power control grab.
Do you think he stopped after the last crime? Do you have any feel for that? Did the killing continue?
It did. I feel like there's probably, we're well up into double digits. I would say probably close to 40, if not 50, maybe.
Wow.
More.
And maybe just changed his MO and what he was, calling himself.
I feel like it wasn't, there wasn't a need for him to be in the spotlight. Now it was more about the work at hand. Like, he literally wanted to just achieve the purpose and mission. Again, this is huge. This is like, defies the scope of dimensional reality, right? Like, looking at clues and context here that probably stretch across lifetimes and multiple incarnations of the same entity. Again, maybe we could prove that at some point with some paranormal investigation and with some different processes, but it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
Definitely. It's good, great insight.
Thank you.
What I want to know is when he started using the hood to kill his victims. The first there were what, 6 murders for the Zodiac?
Five canonical murders,
Okay.
2 survivors, so
All
7
right.
victims in the canonical crimes. And then if you get outside of those, it could be multiple, like she said. There's a couple that was attacked down at Gaviota Beach, California in 1962, which is considered a potential Zodiac crime. Like I said, Sherry Jo Bates in 1963. There was another cab driver named Ray Davis who was killed in Oceanside, California, going down to Southern California. That was very reminiscent of the Zodiac attack against Paul Stein, who was, of course, a cab driver as well. So there's other crimes attributed. A lady named Donna Lass, who they just recently, a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, found her skull. They found her remains after all these years. It was big news in the Zodiac, and that happened near Lake Tahoe, Nevada. It was just inside of past the state line in California, where they found her skull that was finally identified by DNA after many, many years. I think they found it in 1985, and it took that long to do the genealogy and the DNA test on that skull, and it did come back to belonging to a potential Zodiac killer victim named Donna Lass, who was a nurse that disappeared back, I think it was 1971, when she disappeared from her job in Lake Tahoe.
All right, well, they talk about mostly the 6 murders, the ones they always talk about. But in the 3rd murder in 1969, Michael Mageau, he survived.
That was the second.
Oh, he was the second? Oh, okay.
That was the second attack, yeah.
Okay, well, he survived. The first one obviously died, so there was no description. Mageau survived, and he gave the police a description.
Correct.
And now and then the next one, in September 69, Mageau was July 69, then the September 69, Brian Hartnell survived, and he described the hood.
Yes.
So that seems strange. So when the first survivor survived, did he was able to find out that there was a description, and then so because they had a description of him, so then do you think that's when he started with this hood and this costume that he wears?
Well, we only know he wore the hood at Lake Berryessa because Brian survived. Mike Mageau never described anything like a hood, and
no, he didn't.
Could he have been wearing it at the first attack at Lake Herman Road? Possibly, because they both died, so we don't know.
Well, I have that Mageau
possibly wore it there, but we don't think so. We think the only time he ever wore it was in a daytime attack, maybe to conceal his face, of course. Maybe that was one of the reasons he wore it, but he definitely, in his mind, he was identifying with that outfit and thinking I am Zodiac. But he did not tell the victims that. He did not walk up to them and say, I am the Zodiac killer. He never said the word Zodiac. But he's wearing that black outfit with the infamous cross circle logo, which had already been printed in the paper because it showed up on the first 3 letters he wrote.
Okay.
That came with the first 3 pieces of a cipher that were all put together to make 1 to 3 Bay Area newspapers. And then in early August, he wrote what we call the debut of Zodiac because he said the words, "This is the Zodiac speaking," and he wrote that out on the letter. So the logo was out there by the time of that attack on September 27th of 69. But we think he only wore it then, and we think he wore it for his own pleasure, if so to speak. Maybe to instill fear in his victims, but it meant more to him. He did not identify himself as Zodiac.
Okay.
Just I'm trying to rob you, is what his whole game plan was.
Okay, well, my notes said that Mageau gave the police a description of a white male, adult, short, possible 5'8", heavy-set, beefy build.
Beefy build, yep.
So
beefy
he wasn't...
He had a flashlight in his face because he initially thought it was a police officer. He thought that maybe his date that evening, Darlene Farron, it could have been another boyfriend of hers because she dated around a lot. She was married at the time. And she thought, don't worry about it. This is just somebody. I think she said his name might have been Richard, but that's just the rabbit hole of Zodiac, we call it, because she knew a lot of people socially. So it's like never ending, people that could have known Darlene. But yeah, Michael had a flashlight in his face, and that was the description he gave, is what you read.
So, Jen, why did he pick on couples, young couples?
I feel like he really craved that connection even as a young child. It makes me feel like that's something he desperately wanted but couldn't stand, probably because of the early childhood trauma and the dysfunction in his home. And then again in his marriage too, when Drew said it was like a lot of friction in that marriage, like those patterns a lot of times tend to recreate themselves. Even if we don't do it consciously, we do it subconsciously. So we're recreating the trauma of our childhood over and over and over in hopes that we can solve it in some way or recognize the patterning. But you said something really important, and I really didn't hear you say it, Drew, until now. But you said initially that first murder, that he wanted to rob them. He said that, I want to rob you.
Yeah, that was the third attack. He said, I just want your money and your car keys.
Okay.
Trying to put him at ease, like, hey, this will all be over. Just give me your money and your car keys.
He did rob them of their souls, or at least one soul. There was one survivor and one soul. So, a lot of times entities, they state directly what they want. I want to take something from you. I'm taking something from you. That way that you give consent, or there's some consensual informed consent of the entity saying, hey, I'm doing this to you. So it's universal law that you must be informed. There's lots of things pointing to very high level things going on here. Very interesting. But and you said, who named the ciphers 408 and 340? Were they named by the public, or?
No, I think the public did, or the people trying to solve them named him that. Of course, Zodiac gave himself his own name. He called himself Zodiac. He's one of the few serial killers that did name themselves. So he needs to get credit for naming himself as the Zodiac.
And in the letter he said, this is the Zodiac speaking, correct?
This is the Zodiac speaking was his moniker. Yeah, that's the first time we knew he called himself that.
A lot of times, like a reference like that third person is like, I'm the entity that's residing in this shell of a human. Like that's another indication that might be an entity. I am the Zodiac, not
we
this
call
guy.
it persona. We actually sometimes refer to it as the Zodiac persona. Yeah. It's a comic book character. We think he was influenced by comic books, like old westerns, like Tim Holt, because there was a part in there where it's called the Wheel of Death. Lady Doom spins the Wheel of Death, and it says by fire, by rope, by gun. The Zodiac wrote that on the car door at Lake Berryessa. He put, the names of the prior crimes. That's one of the things that tie any of the crimes together, because forensics don't. But he wrote on the car door at that crime. He wrote the date of the first attack at Lake Herman Road. He wrote the dates out, and then he put the date of the Lake Berryessa, and he wrote on the car door by knife. And the Zodiac Killer researcher by the name of Misty Johansson found that it came from a Tim Holt comic book, old Western actor, but it was a fictitious comic book based on the actor. But they had the Wheel of Doom called the by fire, by rope, by knife, and that's something the Zodiac would quote.
That's interesting, because even when we look at dissociative identity disorder, we see that a lot of times we have to rule that out before we can go with the conclusion of exorcism, or we do the exorcism and the DID clears up. We can see that that's a direct correlation too. So saying persona makes complete sense.
Drew, when did he use a knife and a gun?
He used a gun for 3 of the attacks, and then he used a knife for the third. So it was kind of a departure. The MO changed a little bit.
Yeah.
It was daytime versus night. The weapon was a knife. He did brandish a gun to get them to comply. He started out walking up to them with a gun, saying, I just want your money and your car keys. He's wearing this crazy outfit, but they thought they were just being robbed by this guy trying to hide his identity. And then to perform the attack, he took out a foot-long knife. It was in a sheath on his left hip, and it was a right-handed attack, and he put the knife in his right hand and stabbed them both in the back with a foot-long knife blade.
So the first 4 murders that we know of that they have published all the time were couples, and then he kills Stein. First 3?
Yeah, were couples. And then Stein was the departure again, a lone male.
Yeah, so why that changed his MO. He was going for couples, and then he kills a cab driver in San Francisco. What do you think that was all about? Why did he kill a cab driver, a single murder?
There's lots of theories on that. One is that a newspaper reporter named Paul Avery, who was played by Robert Downey Jr. in the movie, was kind of taunted him in an article because he was writing about Zodiac, and he kind of questioned his masculinity, like, you know, you don't have the guts to do this against a guy, or maybe I think he might have implied he was homosexual or something like that. So it could have been hey, I'll show you, I'm going to attack a lone man, you know. So they, you know, some theorize it was maybe a response to Paul Avery, which is another thing interesting about Don Chaney that I found out, that he went to the same junior college as Paul Avery in 1952 in Bakersfield, California, where there were only like 200 male students total. So he knew who Paul Avery was as early as 1952, way before the crimes. Circumstantial, but very interesting that he would have known who Paul Avery was as early as 1952. And then famously, Zodiac Killer sent Paul Avery, when he was a reporter at the San Francisco Chronicle, something called the Halloween card, which it just has all this symbolism in it. It has a tree. It says the words in it, peekaboo, you are doomed. And people took that as a direct threat to kill Paul Avery. It's got a skeleton on the outside of the card, and then the Zodiac either cut out or drew another skeleton and pasted it inside the card. Very meticulously done. It had the thread again. It said by knife, I think, on the inside, quoting again the Wheel of Death, and it was seen as a direct threat against Paul Avery, who he made a point to misspell his name on the cover, Averly, Averly, and he did that on another correspondence as well. So he liked to play with words, but could do very detailed work. That's something that an artist might do on some of these correspondences.
Will you take questions? Do you want to take? All right, I'm going to let the chat room go ahead and put your questions up, but make sure they're in caps so I can see them. Okay. And so, did this Chaney live in the area? Was he familiar with that area where the couples would go?
He knew it. He didn't know it as well as his friend that he accused of being the killer, who had lived in the area. Don Chaney lived in the area for a while, and famously he moved to Southern California during 3 of the canonical crimes. So that's one thing that people might try to strike against him, is that he would have to drive pretty long distances from Pomona, California, back up to the Bay Area to commit those 3 crimes. But, you know, this guy was an avid big game hunter. He was out in the woods for days hunting. He would kill animals, and he would eat the animals he killed. I mean, he was basically like a mountain man. He could live in the outdoors indefinitely if he wanted to. He just grew up hunting and fishing, and he went on long hunts. So him being gone, and one thing we do know about the Zodiac for sure is that his attacks were either on weekends or holidays, like July 4th, and a lot of these fell on weekends. So it seemed like he was confined to either a job or a family or something during some of these times. So
then he would just go up there?
He did know the areas.
So it would be a hit and miss for him then? He would go there and sit and see if anybody shows up?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, and like Serenity was saying earlier, we really believe, and we're finding out more, that and Michael Cole's a guy as well, wrote the 3-book series called Zodiac Revisited. He believes this a lot too, that Zodiac was trying to plan these around the solstices, around the alignment of the planets. That meant more to him than who he killed. It was the date and the location. Like, he was trying to draw radians. One thing he wrote, he talked about finding inches along the radians to find a bomb that he planted, which he never really did plant the bomb. It was more of a threat, but he was trying to line these crimes up in their geographic locations and by the stars, by the alignment of the stars along the signs of the Zodiac. He was trying to line these crimes up by date and location.
All right, we have a question from Renee and Camila. Why did he stop killing? Or what they know of the dates that he stopped killing.
Well, Serenity thinks he kept killing, and he might have. I don't know. Serenity thinks he kept killing.
I think he did. I do think he backed out of the spotlight because he achieved that purpose. It was fulfilled. It was met. The power grab was achieved, and he got away with it. I mean, if you think about it from his perspective, check mark, and then move on and continue whatever he wanted to. Like, he literally had free reign because no one knew who he was.
How old was he when he was doing these killings? How old was he when he started?
My guy was in his early 30s. I think he was 33 at Lake Herman Road, 34 at Presidio Heights when the sketch was taken. Which we believe Zodiac was in that age range just because of the skill sets he already had. Even if you were highly intelligent as a 22-year-old, you wouldn't have the skills that he showed. I firmly believe, not just because of my suspect, that the Zodiac Killer was a draftsman, knew how to draft. Because the ciphers were so neat, he used graph paper on a light table. He used a piece of paper over that. That's why when you look at the 408 or the 340 cipher, all the symbols are done perfectly. They line up perfectly horizontally and vertically because he's using a light grid with graph paper under it, so he's able to write the letters in perfect boxes. I firmly believe he was a draftsman and had at least at least college level of mathematical knowledge to be able to do what he did. And obviously he understood the stars. He knew what celestial navigation was, which is being able to navigate an airplane or a ship by looking at the stars and the particular constellations and knowing where you are, and using what's called a sextant to know where your position is and how to navigate an airplane or a boat by looking at the stars.
Wow. And let's see, Sherry Joe Bates in Riverside. Is that confirmed that the Zodiac killed her?
No.
No?
No, that's not confirmed. It's probably the most popular, what we call a non-canonical attack, was Sherry Joe Bates, who was murdered on Halloween Eve of 1966. She left her college library, and she was going back to her little VW Bug, and someone had altered her engine, took her distributor cap off or something with her car, so her car wouldn't start, and she couldn't go home. So she's walking back from her car, and then she's brutally attacked by knife. I think she was almost decapitated. She was so violently attacked by someone. They never found the killer. The Riverside PD, we know to this day, firmly believes it was an ex-boyfriend of hers, but they could never prove it. They have a DNA sample from that attack, and it did not match her old boyfriend, but that doesn't completely exonerate him. He's still alive. And I think Riverside PD is so convinced that it's him that they never really looked at it that hard. I think the Zodiac took credit for that crime in a letter where he said, "You have stumbled upon my Riverside activity." He liked to take credit for crimes he didn't commit. I personally don't think he murdered Sherry Joe Bates.
Okay.
The only thing that I would suggest, though, to look into, Drew, is bloodshed on Halloween Eve. Bloodshed on Halloween Eve, or 24 to 48 hours before that, is hugely known as satanic activity. Just saying.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Just a theory. Just when you said the date, I'm like,
Halloween Eve.
Yeah, spilling blood in that time, and it was the 66th year. I don't know. Just saying, some stuff jumped out there.
Yeah, that could give it more credibility. I mean, I can't say for sure it wasn't, and he maybe had knowledge of it, but it unfortunately never solved. Even with some DNA from that crime, they don't, I guess, have enough of a sample to trace it back. There was letters written after that crime, like Zodiac. Some turned out to be fraudulent, and they were able to do a DNA sample and found out. They never said who it was, but they found it. I guess it was a young man at the time who was just kind of hoaxing it, and they were able to rule him out as either Zodiac or the killer of Sherry Joe.
Okay, so I have a question for Mayim Alpha. Could he have been in the military or served with the training plus him having a travel route? So could he have been in the military?
Don Chaney was in the Air Force for 2 years.
Okay.
And one place the military comes up in this case is they found footprints at Lake Berryessa walking away from the crime scene, and it came back to be a size 10.5 wing walker shoe is what it's called, and that was a heavily used by the Air Force type shoe at one period of time. They were able to trace that and call it was a military shoe called a wing walker. I think the Navy used some as well, but I think it was a little more prominent in the Air Force.
Could he have been in the military at that time of these killings? Do you think?
I don't. don't know if Serenity picks up anything with military. Be interesting.
I don't think he did really well with authority. I'm going to say that there was probably some issue with his following instructions. I would say this is our guy, then he could not take instruction.
That's an interesting comment.
That's just my gut feeling on that one.
My suspect was a consummate job hopper. Despite being highly intelligent and skilled as a mechanical engineer, he could not stay at a job very long, and it wasn't from intelligence. It was probably authority.
Okay, another question from Planet X. Drew, this is to Drew. Drew, could the Mount Diablo references be a satanic metaphor?
I don't know. This is my friend Ross, and Ross kind of is always kind of liked a Church of Satan connection. So he's probably liking some things that Serenity's talking about. Because Ross comes from that, it likes Anton LaVey, Church of Satan.
Oh yeah.
And I would actually hear from some lady there. So I think I'm probably crazy that Don Chaney played the organ at the Church of Satan after Anton LaVey would give it up and let him play a little bit. But I don't know if that's true. If there's a connection there or not. But it could be. It could be, Ross. I mean, I think Serenity's saying some things that. To kind of bolster your theory a little.
Another question, Cat Daddy Steve. Noreen, who was his last unknown victim? When and where?
I'll let her answer that. That'd be interesting.
Okay, last known victim, when and where? So, just so you know my process, I just ask Spirit, first of all, if I'm allowed to know that. Second of all, if I'm safe to know that, because sometimes when you remote view things, you put yourself in some dicey situations, right? Looking at energy that probably will get me noticed. I feel like this is not a doesn't fit the parameter of killing. I actually feel like it might be a woman in her 50s. Doesn't feel like, actually I feel like she might have died during the killing, like had a medical emergency during the killing. So I think she was getting physically assaulted. I feel like lack of breath or cardiac issue was actual cause of death, but there was stabbing to the body as well. And primarily only on the right side, but I don't think it was ever discovered. We're connected. It was not connected. It was discovered, not connected. Where, so I feel like if I drew the state of California, sorry, this is just what I'm getting in my head. I'm not familiar with the area. Bottom part, where there's like a recess or a bay that goes in, like, if I was looking at the map of the United States on this side and it goes in, but it's on the tip that is closer to Mexico side, like down, like south. Does that make sense?
San Diego, maybe.
Ish area. Right around in that area, yeah. Terrible. I know dimensional reality, but I don't know geography. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So his purpose was for these killings was to capture their soul? Is that what that was all about?
To me, that's what it feels like. It feels like that bolstered his energy level as an entity, as a being. I mean, I don't know what that feels like. I've never taken someone's life, but, I've seen people struggle on the ambulance, and I've seen bodies that have the spirit left the body. You can feel that. You physically can feel that in the environment when it's happening. It's electrifying. And I've died 5 times, so I can personally speak to that aspect of it in that way. But if you were to capture something like that and employ it or enslave it in some way, I can only imagine what kind of type of drug that would be, right? And we know there's these power points, there's places that actually will be it will give the person power to sacrifice someone there, to put bloodshed on that ground, on that space, whether it's a vortex, a power point. It's an equinox point, like how the solstice lines up with the planet. We're starting to understand this a little bit more. And I actually feel like
planetary alignment.
And I literally feel like, that 408 and that 340, sorry, it's still standing out to me because, we have 12 hours of darkness, 12 hours of daylight. That's 12 408s to 12, 340s to 7. We have 7 days of the week. I mean, this is huge calendar and time significance to me. And for somebody that's that cerebral, they're way above us. Like, they're thinking on such a high level. Like, no wonder it took so long for the things to be deciphered, because we literally can't even compute. And if that was an entity, that's going to be like ancient knowledge or an ancient language.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I've studied some of that where somebody would channel the demonic entity or the demon or whatever, and able to do things that they could not otherwise do if they weren't channeling this spirit within them that's able them to give them this higher knowledge.
Correct. I've seen that, unfortunately, exercising people as part of my job. Like, there's things that they say, like, we can't even process, like, on this is an 8-pound meat sack. It's beautiful. I love the brain. I've lectured about it, but it only can go so far. That's ancient wisdom. Like, we literally can't even understand. So I don't know, that to me, that makes it make more sense. This makes sense on a higher dimensional reality. I mean, I never really even looked at this before like this until you asked me to do this, but it makes a lot of sense, and I'd like to see what the direct correlation, if there is any, with Jack the Ripper, and if we could see if it's the same entity. Could we do some sort of, paranormal type of investigation where we could get quantifiable data? Maybe I channel in one room and you guys have some equipment in another room, and see if it correlates and if we can get a name. Because a lot of times they like to own their stuff, right?
Yeah, like a spirit box type or a...
Yep.
Yeah.
Something, I mean, it would be fascinating to me. This is, in my opinion, this is where the field needs to go. We need to be able to use it for law enforcement. We need to be able to bridge
absolutely.
the gaps here.
Psychic, it's all should be utilized.
Absolutely. If we have access to it, why not? We could be solving crimes with this information. I mean, I'm the dirty secret for a lot of departments, because that was my past life, or not my past life, but my former vocation before I really went into this after being a counselor. I mean, it's verifiable data. A lot of times I could tell you, where things are. We've produced physical items, and that's from a disembodied spirit that tells you where it's at to go get it. It's pretty valid sometimes. I mean, you can't discount it.
I've heard a lot of serial killers say that they had that voice that was making them do it. That's what it just sounds like.
Mm-hmm. And, a lot of these movies now, if you look at Nefarious, I really want to go watch the Zodiac Killer movie, because I want to see what I felt and heard, and some sort of validation for me on my end, too. I know it's a movie, and I know it's Hollywoodified, but, did I see something that was like this scene that they created, or how am I experiencing that, spiritually, energetically, as opposed to how it happened and how they're depicting it. It's just wild, right? So
watch the movie Zodiac and go to YouTube and look up a documentary called His Name Was Arthur Lee Allen, and Don Chaney's in that. It's about Arthur Lee Allen, but you can see how he acts, his body language. It would be interesting to get your opinion on that documentary.
I definitely take notes when I'm watching it. I'm very fascinated now. My major in college, this is no lie. We can thank my professor. He was on hunting Hitler. I don't know if I'm at liberty to divulge his information, but he said, you don't want to be a forensic psychologist. This is not your jam, because we were going to go into behavioral analysis of violent crime. And he said, you're too intuitive for this. You're too sensitive. Mm-hmm. So he literally shifted me into being a licensed professional counselor as opposed to a forensic psychologist, which I think I would have did rather well at, but I was pretty sensitive to reading all these horrific crimes, right?
Yep.
Interesting. Just interesting.
Good read.
Thank you.
Bloody Benders wants to know about this, the code. Are some of his codes that have not been deciphered? Now, are some of them, they have been deciphered by 2 teachers, weren't there? The
first one was a teacher and his wife, and the second one was 3 different gentlemen, private citizens.
And those were deciphered. And so, okay, so when they deciphered them, what did they say?
Just more rantings that the Zodiac like to do. One talked about, slaves in paradise. The 408 said, I like killing people. It's more fun than hunting wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of them all, referring to a book called, or a movie called The Most Dangerous Game. It's kind of the theme of that particular cipher. And then the 340 was more of that. denied being a guy that called into the Philton Bar show in San Francisco who claimed to have been the Zodiac, but that was later found out to be a mental patient. But when that was deciphered, it said, I'm not the guy that called into the show. So it was interesting that he was actually denying being somebody. He didn't want people to think that was him calling into that particular talk show back in 1970, I believe. He said that I don't fear the gas chamber. And then I think the last two words were paradise, death. Of course, he liked the misspelled words that would still sound the same phonetically. He spelled paradise, Paradice. Talked about slaves in paradise with that spelling. But of course, it didn't reveal his identity at all. He threatened to in something called the My Name Is cipher, which has never been broken. And, you know, the three guys that broke the 340, which are all three very brilliant people, said that the others are just too short. They're way too many possible solutions to break.
Wow. Okay, so are we finished with that case then? Anything else you want to contribute?
I want to say something because I don't know about the notes or the ciphers. So when you said paradise, in my brain I heard P-A-I-R of dice, and also like paradise, death. Like I don't know why, but I would think snake eyes. Like I'm looking at you. I'm gonna see you in the afterlife.
Could have been, because those are the last two words of the decoded 340. It was just paradise, death.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow. Well,
we could be here for hours.
Oh my God, I know.
Fascinating.
I know. Drew is
good insight, because that's where we've been going with this, is planning along the solstices and the planets, and she was already alluding to slaves in the afterlife without saying that exact words, is what he was doing. So now I believe he really believed that. He really believed he was going to have his victims were going to be his slaves after he crossed over this life. And
that phrase that he's not bothered by the gas chamber, the reference to the gas chamber, an entity is not going to perish in a gas chamber. A physical human vessel will die. That's going to have no effect on energy at all. You can kill as many humans that energy or that entity is in, and it's not going to affect them. And at least they just go from, the next vehicle to the next vehicle. And that's sad to say, but that's actually how it works.
Wow.
Very good.
Yeah. She's good, huh? Yeah.
She's good. I did not tell anybody about Agatha Christie. You gotta really know my stuff to even come up with Agatha. That's not a common name.
And listen, not to be rude, I just looked at the pictures 5 minutes before I got on the call because it's been crazy.
She's telling the truth, everybody. She pulled Agatha out of nowhere. So that got my attention immediately.
Period did that.
And you can't cold read and throw out a name like Agatha. You'd say like Julie or Linda, not Agatha. How many people know someone named Agatha? Nobody.
Oh, God. That
caught my attention immediately.
Well, that's why we have Jen on the show.
Very good.
We have a gem here with us, and that's why I can't wait till we do a couple of other ones. Okay.
Yeah, we gotta do Yuba.
Oh God. Oh yeah.
We need some answers.
I think that will probably be a 2-hour show, and we probably only do that one case. All right. So
because
go ahead.
So many people involved.
All right. Let's go to the next one. Okay. All right, D.B. Cooper. Go ahead, Drew.
Okay, D.B. Cooper, another famous unsolved American mystery, kind of, something along the similar time period in part of the country as Zodiac did, but it happened on November 24th of 1971. A man carrying a black anti-shake case, wearing a business suit, and wearing dark sunglasses walked up to the ticket counter at the Portland International Airport. He paid $20 in cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle, Washington, a milk run of a flight. This was in the mid-afternoon, Thanksgiving Eve. It was the day before Thanksgiving, so lots of people traveling. I think he was the last person to board the plane. He took a seat towards the back. One of the flight attendants came up to him, and they were just attending to the different people there, and he wound up handing her a note, and her name was Florence Schaffner. And she thought that, he's a middle-aged guy. So she goes, here's a middle-aged guy just hitting on me. So she stuck the note in her pocket. And he said, no, miss, I think you really need to read that note. She reads the note, and it says, I have a bomb in the briefcase with me, and I need you to sit by me. And she sits by him. He opens up the briefcase and shows her a bomb inside the briefcase, or what looked authentic enough to her as a bomb. It had what looked like dynamite, wires, and he quickly had her attention. And he said, I need you to take down my demands. And she wrote down what he was going to ask for. He wanted $200,000 in cash, $20 bills. He wanted 4 parachutes. He described them as 2 front and 2 back. He wanted the plane to refuel in Seattle, and so she takes the demands up there to the cockpit. I think the plane it was after the plane had taken off when he finally has her dictate all this stuff. So the plane is already taking off, headed towards that short trip to Seattle. So they quickly decide to meet the man's demands, because they've never heard of this before. A briefcase could blow up the whole plane. So they radio ahead from the cockpit and said, hey, this guy needs that. He means business. So they start collecting the money in Seattle. A lot of the bills were serial number cataloged. A lot of them were already pre-cataloged in case of something like a ransom was needed. So a lot of that was already done. The ones that weren't done were quickly being typed in. They went and found from a skydiving place 2 front parachutes, 2 back parachutes, which is 2 sets, which was smart because that makes them think he's going to take a hostage with him. So it took him time to meet, to get all his stuff together. So the plane would basically just be flying around Seattle, and they just told the passengers just had no idea it was being hijacked. So they just said, hey, we're just waiting for a time to land. They knew something might be wrong, but they didn't know it was being hijacked. So plane, after about 2.5 hours or so, finally lands in Seattle, far away from the terminal. Is Cooper demanded. He bought the ticket under the name Dan Cooper. DB Cooper was a media screw up because they found someone in the area named DB, and someone said it over a phone line, and the Associated Press picked up on it, and that's how the name stuck, DB. But he actually bought the ticket under the name Dan Cooper. So he plane lands in Seattle. He lets off all the passengers except for the flight crew. Another stewardess named Tina Mucklow, who spent the most time with Cooper, brought the parachutes to him. She brought the $200,000 ransom to him in a bank bag, and that upset Cooper because he wanted it in a knapsack. He specified a knapsack, but he didn't get that. They brought it to him in a bank bag, and he's kind of giddy at seeing all this money. All the passengers get off, and one very important thing that happened was he wanted the plane to take off. It was a Boeing 727, and it had what's called an aft staircase, and that's in the middle of the back body of the plane. And of course, that's where he was going to plane to jump from. And he wanted the pilot to take off with this staircase down, and the pilots did not know that could be done. So in so many ways, Cooper knew that plane better than the pilots did. He said, I want the plane to take off with that staircase down, and they absolutely said, no, that's going to hurt the aircraft. We're not doing it. So Cooper finally relented, and they raised that aft staircase. Not long after the plane eventually does take off from Seattle, it refuels, then it takes off from Seattle. There's some discussion about where it's going to land. They talked about Mexico, but there's not enough fuel. They talked about San Francisco. So they finally settle on Reno, Nevada to be the place where the plane's going to land. So Cooper starts putting on one of the parachutes. Tina Mucklow says, here's an instruction card of how to put it on. He says, I won't be needing that. And then he shuts all the blinds. He makes her go back up to the front cockpit. The last thing she remembered was him putting on one of the parachute rigs. And then sometime not long after they leave Seattle, somewhere we believe near approaching Portland, Oregon, there's a pressure bump felt in the plane. And they think that's when Cooper got the staircase. Actually, he had Tina Mucklow's help to lower the staircase hydraulically. And he walks out on that staircase and jumps off somewhere around either Battleground, Washington, or Ariel, Washington, north of Portland, Oregon, just northeast of Portland, Oregon, not far from there, is where they believe DB Cooper jumped. And no one has ever seen or heard from him again. He becomes a legend. Of course, the name DB sticks, and it was never DB. It was Dan, of course, but DB just stuck. It was in the newspapers everywhere. All we had was the descriptions from the flight crew, and still not identified to this day. Everybody has a suspect, like I do. The next thing that happens in the case is in 1980, a young boy named Brian Ingram. He was 8 years old. He was with his family having a little picnic on the banks of the Columbia River, not far from Vancouver, Washington, at a place called, ironically, Tina Bar. And he's building a little fire with some sticks and some wood, and he finds 3 stacks of D.B. Cooper's money. It was 3 stacks of $20 bills. They were somewhat eroded. There was rubber bands on them. They were still partially intact but brittle, and it turned out to be about a little over $5,800 in cash. And they later identified that by serial number as being part of D.B. Cooper's loot. No, not one other bill has turned up in circulation to this day, other than what Brian found on that beach in 1980. So that's kind of a mystery in itself, is how the money got to where he found it. So it's kind of like 2 mysteries in one. So that's roughly that case in a nutshell.
Okay, so do you want me to show his picture now? I'm going to show the picture, and this is who and Drew wrote the book, so we're going to show you who Drew thinks this is. Okay. Hold on. Okay, I have it up. And you want to talk about the picture that I have up, Drew?
Sure, that's one of my favorites. That was a really hard picture to get. That is of the man is Ted B. Braden. The woman in the picture is his mother, Mary. And that picture's from around 1975. Of course, the D.B. Cooper heist was in 1971, so this picture's fairly close to the time of the hijacking. Ted Braden was 43 years old at the time of the hijacking. D.B. Cooper was described as middle-aged. That's one of the most overriding things you hear of the descriptions from the flight crew and some of the passengers that said they could remember Cooper were adamant that he was middle-aged. So Ted Braden was 43 years old. Another comment that a lot of the witnesses to Cooper said was that he had a swarthy appearance. They used the word swarthy back then, meaning dark skin. Some people interpret that to mean maybe he was Native American or maybe Italian or olive skin. But you can see in that picture, that's why I like it so much, is because against his mother, he looks like he's got very dark skin for a Caucasian man, which is one of the reasons I like that picture. But 43 years old, that's his mother. Mary Dearbaugh was her name. She had remarried. Ted Braden was born in Toledo, Ohio in 1928. He had a pretty rough home life because his mother had got remarried after he was 1 year old. And then his mother had another child with her new husband, and her new husband kind of treated his biological son a lot better than Ted. So Ted had a rough home life. He winds up joining to go fight in World War II at age 15. He lied about his age. No, actually he was 16, but he lied and said he was 18. I think he had just turned 16, lied about his age to get into World War II. He goes and trains to be a member of the 101st Airborne paratrooper. Tough stuff, tough training. He misses D-Day, but he gets over there into combat and fights in the Battle of the Bulge. At age 16, he's already seeing heavy combat as a 16 years old. We have one story of him going out to the German listening post, which is a needle in a haystack that my friend Ryan Burns found. Just how brave he was. He liked to seek out action. He liked to seek out trouble. Adrenaline junkie already at age 16. He had 2 Bronze Crosses. He had two or three Purple Hearts. At age 16, he's in heavy combat as a member of the 501st Parachute Infantry Division, which is a similar unit to the Band of Brothers unit, if you're familiar with that TV series based on a real story. He was in the 501st, part of the 101st Airborne as a paratrooper. Heavy jumping, heavy combat. He survives World War II. Obviously, he gets back. He goes to college for a while back in his hometown of Toledo for a couple of years, and then he has an on and off thing with getting back into the military, and he realizes what he's good at is skydiving. He's becomes an expert skydiver, what they call a master skydiver, getting his master jump wings. He's training people in paratrooping at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and then he's in a jumping team, an international jumping team called the Golden Arrows, where they compete all through Europe, and he'd win a lot of these competitions, and that was in the early 60s. By the mid-60s, he winds up getting, he's back in the Army, and he's a member of Special Forces. He gets into a Black Ops unit in Vietnam called MACV-SOG. These are the guys that did the dirty stuff in Vietnam, the best of the best. They did prisoner snatches. They did all kinds of stuff. I mean, they would do infiltrate. They were going into Laos, which we weren't supposed to be there because of the Geneva Convention. So these guys were going in sterile, where they had no dog tags, nothing to identify them. And if they were caught, they would just let them be killed, because you can't admit that we had guys over there fighting in Laos. He was a team leader of a 7-man team called Team Colorado. He was called the 1-0 team leader, what they called it back then by code. He did the first successful wiretap in Laos with his team. He did crazy stuff over there, high adrenaline. He had a temper sometimes. He would pull guns on some of his own teammates if they disagreed with him. He killed a friendly Vietnamese fighter over in Vietnam that we have an accurate account of. Just killed him in cold blood for whatever reason. And so he was causing trouble over in Vietnam, but he had friends in high places, so they always just brushed all this stuff under the rug, even murdering a friendly combatant with a South Vietnamese soldier. So that was kind of Ted Braden's thing over in Vietnam. He loved being in Vietnam because he could do a lot of parachuting over there, and he could pull his ripcord under 1,000 feet, which is a suicide to most people, but he liked the adrenaline of that. So he was described by a fellow Special Forces officer as having a secret death wish combined with amazing survival instincts, was the way he was described. And the way that I picked him, I've always been a fan of the D.B. Cooper case, even before I'd heard of Ted Braden, who was brought up by a guy named Bruce Smith. He's called the Mayor of Cooperville. He's a D.B. Cooper expert, wrote D.B. Cooper in the FBI. He was kind of developing Braden with another researcher that goes under the name Snowman on the D.B. Cooper research forum. Real hardcore D.B. Cooper researchers. So I kind of picked them up from Bruce and Snowman and tried to find out as much as I could about this guy. And the reason he comes up as a suspect is because people thought D.B. Cooper jump sounded like something Special Forces would do, particularly Black Ops, which is, there's only 1,300 that were in the Black Ops unit in Vietnam. And these guys were questioned. People would go find, because it was classified at the time, but then the statute of limitations wore off, and they could question these guys, and they would say, hey, did anybody among you sound like would do this crazy jump, for $200,000? And then they all said one name. They all said Ted Braden, Ted Braden, Ted Braden, including the legends, like a guy named Billy Waugh, who had 50 years between Black Ops Special Forces, MACV-SOG, and Black Ops with the CIA. Took the first surveillance photos of Osama bin Laden, got within 30 yards of bin Laden, could have killed him multiple times, but they told him not to. Hardcore guy, knows a lot of things, and he was pretty convinced Ted Braden was D.B. Cooper. So I'm in pretty good company with guys like that. John Plaster is another name. Special Forces legend believes that Braden was Cooper. So I had all that behind me. So that's kind of the Ted Braden in a nutshell. He leaves Vietnam. He goes over to fight in the Congo in Africa. He's caught over there by the CIA because they found out he was fighting as a mercenary. He's put into he's brought back to America in Fort Dix. He's released from Fort Dix. All of a sudden, even though he was a deserter from Vietnam, he deserted Vietnam to go fight as a mercenary, but they wound up just letting him go with a discharge under honorable conditions because he knew people in high places, and he just had to agree to never join the military again. And this was in 1967, where he's court-martialed, can't ever join the army again. So my theory is he hijacked an airplane to get back at Uncle Sam for taking away his ability to be in the military. So that's his. It's kind of convoluted, but that's Ted in a nutshell.
So what do you think, Jen?
I should have went first. I literally wrote down all my stuff and I check marked it off. So I felt like he was Native American or had like he was not white. And I have this picture that she sent me, right? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a different one. Yeah, that's from
okay,
Vietnam.
So I don't have the one with his mom, and then I have the sketches, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's two. Yeah, because there's three different sketches. Yeah.
This skin tone is what I feel like most resembles his skin tone. Okay, almost like a reddish, right? And that makes me feel like that goes along. That's the other picture she sent me. That looks like that complexion to me, right there.
Yeah,
okay, and I'm native, so I'm pretty good with my skin tones, right? So I felt like that was bam. It was Native American. I also felt like he was extremely intelligent. I wrote he was government agent.
Yeah, he was highly intelligent. He had a high IQ. We know that.
I thought he was in the Air Force or some kind of military training.
He was in the Air Force briefly.
Okay, and then the name John kept coming in, right? I'm writing this down feverishly, and I was like, John Kennedy? Like that? I don't know. Okay, some kind of big connection, and I don't want to say the word collusion. It's overused right now, but like there was a massive amount of knowledge that he had that got him out of issues, right? Like he had special inside information.
He had a lot of that globally.
That would be very damaging to many people. But John F. Kennedy kept coming over and over and over. And I was like, really? I just wrote it down. I don't question it. But the chaos in his young life, it made me feel, because he's not living now. This man is not living now.
2007.
I feel like he talked directly to me. Like, this is his spirit communicating. I mean, I should have went first. You probably would have fell off your chair. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I got that. I felt like the chaos in his young life the combat was cake compared to what he went through. I felt like he was in combat as a child. Like, he had to fight for his life. So he was like, military, why not? Sign me up. Let's go. Never really wanted to hurt people as far as the actual event is concerned. Okay, could have hurt a lot of people. And I don't know if the bomb itself was there, it was functional, but I don't think it was ever going to go off. That was my gut feeling. I don't feel like it would have went off. The name Michael Davis, I think that's an alias. Michael Davis. I don't have a middle name, just Michael Davis.
He would use aliases, but I haven't heard that one, but I'll write it down.
Just something, and I wrote the name, or the word alias by the name. Still wanted to convey, didn't want to hurt people, really was remorseful for a lot of those decisions, but often felt like it was, me or him, like who, always combat related. Constant state of emotion too. Didn't like to sit still, very high strung, almost made me like nervous even in his energy, because he had so much energy, right? But I do feel like you are spot on with your subject, because I feel like this is him and he's directly communicating. I mean, I could have told you most of that stuff before you even talked. That would have been extremely impressive. I thought we should have did that one, but I didn't even really think about that. But I did write the letter CIA down. I didn't know if he was directly involved or just had a connection to it. But I also feel like money was kind of like a giant FU. Sorry to say it like that, but like, I took your money. I don't even want it, but look what I did to you. Like I got one over on you. It was an insurance policy, I guess you could say. Maybe that's why it never went into circulation. But I think some fell out. I think that's why that little boy, you said there was a little boy that I feel like money rained down. There may be some found too.
He could have lost it in the jump.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was all found in the same place, or it was found and then there was a little bit more found like 2 further areas down, right? Like, so that's where it feels like it dropped 1, 2, 3 places in total, and then it was combined, where the little boy found it. But I also feel like, again, would it not be so cool if we could get a ghost box that's running?
I'd love to ghost box that.
Why aren't we doing this stuff to see if we can get some, validation and do some high-level stuff to see if we can prove? Because a lot of times, people pass on and they have a story still that they want to tell. This is kind of why I have a job, right? Like, I'm that conduit between the living and the dead, and we need to get this stuff across. And this is a big deal. This is governmental insider information. He wasn't really down with. That's what I feel like. I don't think he was in agreement with a lot of things that happened with the U.S. government. And I'm going to be honest, he's kind of having I told you so moment right now, because we're going through some stuff. So maybe he knew some stuff that is coming out now. So that's my gist on it.
But why did he do this? Why did he hijack the plane for a ransom? Why?
Honest to God, I feel like he just could turn around and give the middle finger and be like, I did this to you. Don't bother looking for me. Like, I'm not going to be found. And he had that skill set that, early on in life, he just could disappear. And I feel like he did that and was like, see, told you so. And I do feel like he was threatened on some level for the information that he held or carried. So he got what he wanted, his just desserts.
So they did find what, $5,800, but they never found the rest of the money. Did he keep that money?
I do feel like he kept it. I felt like it was a huge insurance policy, almost like if I need it, I have it. And I don't think he used it or got to use it or needed it.
Yeah, because they never found him. There was no body. There was nothing. They never found him. Where did he go?
I do feel like he stayed in that area of the U.S. for a little while, but I feel like he's in a different country. He's in a country that would kind of look like maybe it's overseas for sure. I would say somewhere like Germany-esque area. Nothing that anybody would ever think that he would get to. Very under the radar.
We lost Drew. Drew, are you there?
I thought so.
Oh man. Let me see.
Froze.
I'm back. I lost you.
Oh,
There
okay.
you are.
Okay, there you go. All right. So I asked a couple questions. You want to ask some? Drew, ask some. I already asked some questions. You weren't there. So
I missed it.
So I think he's in he's passed now, but I think when he left, he stayed here for a little bit. Then I don't know why, but I feel like I see Germany-esque area. I feel like that man went exactly opposite of where people thought he would be. Like he could survive anywhere. It was like no big thing to him. He's like, they're never finding me. And she asked me why the money, did he spend it? No, I don't think he spent it. I think it was an insurance policy and kind of like, I did this to you, don't look for me. Like, because he was threatened. I feel like he was threatened. And he thought, okay, that's fine. You want to threaten me? I'm going to show you what I'm capable of.
So he jumps out of the plane. There was no body, so he survived. Where did he go from there? I mean, it was in the dark. It was at nighttime.
That's what we always debate. How did he get out of there? Did he have an accomplice? Did he take the train? Did he take an 18-wheeler? Like I like to believe that he, how did he get out of the woods? I mean, it wasn't as deep in forestry as some people make it out to be in that part of Washington. A good friend of mine, DB Cooper, the guy that runs DB Cooper podcast called the Cooper Vortex, is from the area where Cooper jumped from, and he said it's not near as bad. You could walk for a while and find a house, so it would have been nothing compared to the jungles of Vietnam to some of that rain to get out of there. But we debate how he got out.
I feel like he showed me a compass, okay? Expert in navigation. So that was like nothing for him. I do feel like I don't think there was an accomplice. I think he literally wanted to ghost. Like he was going off the radar, and he literally did that. And I don't feel like he had anybody that was going to hold him back either at that point in his life. He makes me feel like he just got what he needed and got to where he needed. And I feel like he did have aliases, so it was not hard for him to become a different person and slide right under the radar. And you know what? That was I hate to keep saying it like that, but there was giant FU to the government. Like, don't threaten me. Don't tell me. He didn't like authority either. Definitely a theme here.
Not at all.
So, like if you tell him what to do, he's going to do the exact opposite. So, and he was like, oh, you want me to shut my mouth? Oh, you're going to threaten my life? Because I do feel like his life was threatened for the information that he carried, or his clearance level or something close to that, right?
He knew global CIA secrets.
Well,
Wow.
I think he knew stuff that we're finding out now. And I think when I got the reference to John several times, I was like, John Kennedy? Like, John F. Kennedy?
Yeah,
Really?
sometimes that we've joked that he could have been one of the shooters, because we all pretty much should know that there was more than Lee Harvey Oswald there. There was definitely 2 shots at the Kennedy assassination. I mean, and Braden would be the kind of weirdo the CIA might call up for that.
Well, I definitely feel like there's a big connection there. And again, I would like to see, if we're going to go into this, let's go full tilt boogie and let's do some sort of paranormal immersion activity and see if we can get, confirming or collaborative information that actually confirms what I'm feeling, what I'm getting. If we get it on a ghost box, that'd be pretty wild.
How can we get it? Well, Drew, do you do ghost boxes?
No, but I'm interested in it. I've never done it, but I've watched some of the videos with it. Somebody had actually done a ghost box on a YouTube channel with Arthur Lee Allen. Of course, that was Don Chaney's buddy that he accused of being the Zodiac, which I don't remember what came out in it, but I thought that was an interesting concept to try to get somebody. I'd love to do. Bruce Smith actually learn remote viewing and do DB Cooper. He did see Ted Braden walking out of the end of the plane, but he said no, but it wasn't Cooper, but Braden was there showing me who Cooper was, or something weird like that, kind of convoluted, but I thought that was a great thing to try.
Well, Drew, you need to. Drew,
that would be awesome. We have Noreen, we got Dave. We can use him. Maybe we can get him to help us.
Is Dave there?
Dave's here, but he's not available right now. He's on a call.
Dave is so good at the ghost box. You think he would join us?
I'm sure he would do it for you, Noreen. He'd do anything for you. He loves you.
Oh my God. Okay, so Drew, Jen is coming back on February 29th. So we're gonna do the Yuba 5, okay?
Yeah, let's use the spirit box on Yuba 5.
Okay, so that we'll spend.
It's got a lot of momentum, and there won't be anything in advance, and we'll see what comes out.
Okay.
Yeah, if anything, I want to do is Yuba.
We're doing
and
that.
I don't want to I'm just so the viewers know, I'm pretty busy too. So literally, I was 5 minutes before the call. Hurry up, looking we're supposed to be doing.
You'd have to. Yeah, you nailed Agatha. You had my attention when you said the name Agatha. You had my complete undivided attention.
Oh my God. Dave told me about Jen a couple years ago. Oh no, was it a year and a half ago? And I for some reason it just didn't happen all the way because I was using somebody else, and then I decided, well, God, no, I gotta use Jen. I mean, and so I'm so happy. Thank you for being Dave's girlfriend. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, Dave.
I'll tell him you said that. I don't know if he's tuned in out there or not, but he was on a different call with us.
Well, he told me you were amazing, and God, we are so lucky. All right, so on the 29th, we'll do Yuba 5. We're gonna get Dave to do the ghost box with us, and we're gonna just do that show that whole night.
Ask him. I can't volunteer. I have to check his schedule because he has so many different engagements. But I'll ask.
Please.
Yes, I'll call Dave. Yeah, we're gonna do that. Oh God, this is gonna be so awesome. Oh, I'm so excited.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Oh, it's gonna be great. So is there anything else you want to contribute toward the DB Cooper? Do you have any other questions, or do you want to contribute anything, Jen?
Nope, I think I got everything out. It's an interesting cat though, like just talking to him in spirit. I'd like to have him on my constant panel of advisement. I mean, I think he was a little bit of a badass and defied any kind of authority.
Is he polite?
He's very respectful, energetically. I mean, I feel like he's even gentlemanly.
Towards women, he was ultra respectful, and if a man didn't stand up when a woman entered a room around him, they would be scolded.
Yeah, he definitely told me twice he did not want to hurt anybody. If it was not a threat to him, he didn't take it that way. He had an off switch. It just wasn't used very often.
Oh, God, this was great.
Perfect.
This is really a great show. I mean, it's so exciting to hear this information, and I'm glad, Drew.
Great.
I wanted you
to souls in the afterlife, and that makes so much more sense that somebody would have to be like that, to commit murder, something taking you over to do these things.
Like, if you reference that movie Nefarious, that's the closest I've found, like, in a movie format to, like, refer people to see how that interaction actually happens. Because the human, we lose the human at some point. The soul is, like, displaced, right? Whether it's due to trauma, it's due to anesthesia. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that it can leave because of blood force trauma. But a lot of times the entity that possesses them talks different, acts different, walks different, parts of their hair, like the mannerisms the person will outwardly display are the mannerisms of the actual entity, not their own. And a lot of times when people get, you know, and possession is such a vast area, a vast topic to discuss, but even when people get surgery and come back out from surgery from the anesthesia process and they are talking different, a lot of times they talk different, their mannerisms are different, they have energetic attachments. Not a full-blown possession, but an energetic attachment.
That's fascinating, because I heard someone doing that came out of anesthesia not long ago, so that's really fascinating. Never heard that.
I've worked with everybody from the anesthetist to the OR nurses to the operating doctors themselves, and you know, they get attachments too. So I've been able to also teach them energetic responsibility in an OR where you have huge life turnover all the time, and we have souls and what to do with them. And Harvard did us a great justice too, but they did this study where the body changes weight 21 to 26 grams, so we can actually see the soul leaving the body. So we're you know, scientifically catching up with this, but you know, this just opens everything up so much more to see that, you know, especially with murders that are committed and throughout different times, I would like to see if we can kind of see if that's the same entity over different time periods operating in the same fashion.
That's fascinating.
God.
It's fun. That's a different show, Noreen.
Yeah. We're doing that Yuba show, though.
Oh, my God.
It's red hot now, and it feels like we have momentum there. So any psychic clue that would help us there would be
Well, I'm going to stay cold. I'm going to stay cold from it. I don't usually, I'm on social media just enough to, like, advertise, talk about openings, post positive stuff, right, and kind of educate people, but I usually don't watch the news. I don't watch YouTube unless I'm watching the cooking channel or kitties or house building, because that's where I'm at right now with my life, just because I like to stay stress-free, right, and I don't like to be tainted with any information, so I'm not looking at anything till, like, right before we go on. So
sounds great.
If you want me to give commentary prior to you telling me details, that might be something.
Yeah, we will. We'll definitely do that.
Oh yeah. Drew's the expert on this case.
I will just sit down even maybe 10 minutes before and dump everything out to, like, that I'm getting as I get in the zone.
So you want to, so when we do the show on the 29th, we'll bring you on, and you want to tell what you picked up before Drew tells you the story?
I can just, if you give me like a loose definition,
just a basic story, and then she can, without much detail, and then she can fill in.
Yep, that might be more validating for the viewers too, because like I said, you probably, your mouth would have probably hit the floor if I said he was Native American, he was in Air Force.
Yeah, you did say Air Force, and I did say Air Force. Yeah. And most people don't know that he was in the Air Force for a time, not briefly. Okay. 6-month stint, but most people just consider him Army, but he was in the Air Force.
Okay, so let's remember that. Let's remember that for the 29th, okay?
Okay.
And then if I happen to forget, you tell me. I mean, you just tell me, hey, Noreen, this is how we're going to do it. You just tell me. You know? A lot of times,
like when I go read for a police department, that's what we do. They give me very loose case details. Like, they'll just do it over the phone. Like, now that I remote view and I can do everything remotely, like, I could be in West Virginia and the case can be in Pittsburgh, and I just remote view it. Like, missing children, a lot of times that's how that goes down. Like, is the child still alive? Are they close to their home? You know, how far are they? What kind of resources do we need? Do we need, water? Do we need air? What kind of things do I feel? And then I just give them that, and then they tell me if I was right. So that's how we do that.
Okay. Yeah, we should do a show on missing people. That's really hot topic. Hot topic. Drew, you want to go in on that with us? Drew, missing people?
Of course. That's one of my most
I know.
Interesting fields is missing people. Of course, Yuba County 5 is still a missing person case, even though we know how that turned out. But people that are still missing that we don't know what happened to them. I mean, there's so many cases that I follow. One we should do, Noreen. I don't know if you've ever heard of the case of Brian Schaefer.
You did that. You wrote a book, didn't you? You wrote.
Yeah.
I don't know who he is.
Well, we should do that with Serenity too, because it's one of the most fascinating missing person cases ever. They never found the guy. He was at a bar in Columbus, Ohio. He was a med student, and he was going to fly out on a trip and possibly get engaged to his girlfriend. And he leaves this bar. Nice looking guy. He was like 6'1", 6'2". Never seen again. And no one knows what happened to him, how he got out of the bar. There was film footage, surveillance of everyone leaving the bar, but not Brian. To this day, they don't know what happened to him. It's one of those mind-boggling, fascinating missing person cases ever.
Okay.
And it's called Brian Schaefer was his name.
Okay.
That would be a great one to try to figure out.
Okay.
We don't know.
Let me write that down. I'll probably have to do an extra show because I'd rather do these than the other ones. So.
Yeah, Brian Schaefer is probably one of those popular missing person cases ever.
Okay.
Because it's so mind-blowing. Like, there's no rhyme or reason what could have happened to this guy.
All right. So the next one will be Yuba 5, and then our next show we'll do 2 missing people, or 3, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know how much will be involved, but we'll do Brian Schaefer, and we'll pick out 2 more, okay?
Terrence Williams would be a good one. Terrence Williams.
Okay. Who's he?
He's a gentleman that worked for a television production crew. He was living in England. He came back home to live with his family for a while. Then he took another production job in Idaho at a remote place for a TV show called Gold Rush. It was real popular. And at some point during the filming, he was an assistant. Terrence, something came over Terrence, and he dropped his radio that he was using, and he sprinted down. He slid down this huge cliffside that was like 20 feet, and he sprinted towards the woods, never to be seen again. And he was no athlete. His father would tell you he was flat-footed. He was not an athlete. But something came over him, and he just darted off into the woods, never seen again. And that was 5-6 years ago. No sign, no trace of Terrence Woods Jr. whatsoever. It's mind-boggling.
Oh, God. Okay, I got another one I want to do. It's about a kid. He went on a picnic. They never went on a picnic together, and the family went on a picnic, and it was in a certain area in the national park in the woods. And
yeah, that's Dennis. What's his last
not
name?
Martin.
Boy,
No, I don't think it was Dennis Martin, was it? He was the little one.
Dennis Martin? Okay.
Yeah, I think he was the 4-year-old, right? He was a 4-year-old. This kid was. I think this one was an older one. I did so many shows on missing kids. Anyway, I can't remember. So the kid went on this picnic with the family. Maybe it was, and there was another family not too far from where they were picnicking, and there were girls. I think it was the girls, and they said, "Oh, let's go play hide and seek in the woods." And so he went off.
Dennis Martin.
Is it? Is that him? He went off.
Yeah, they played hide and seek, and
he never came back.
And the other family, their name was Martin too, which was just.
That's right. You're right, and he disappeared, and nobody knows what happened to him. Martin. Oh God, we got to do that one. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's so tragic.
Oh, I know. Okay, well, I'm really excited now. God, I could do this every night. I love it. All right, so
welcome to my life. This is what I do every day.
Yeah, good stuff.
This is great. So we're going to do a show now with the 3 of us on missing people. Okay, we'll do that. We'll try and do that once a month or every other month. Is that okay? And then Drew, your homework is to learn the ghost box in case we can't get Dave.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And if you need me to buy you something, I'll buy you a radio, whatever. I'll help you do that. So
yeah, you can buy a ghost box. It's made as a ghost box.
I don't know how.
I'm sure Dave will tell you too if he's
like $80.
He'll help you.
Okay, I'll buy you, Drew. I'll buy you the ghost box. I'll ask Dave what I should buy him, and I'll send it to Drew. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll buy it, and you learn it. Okay. Deal. Okay. Okay, guys, I'm really excited. Okay, thank you so much. I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. It was really good, and I wouldn't expect anything else with the 2 of you. They're just fabulous. You're 2 of my favorite guests. And so I'll be talking to you, and I'll see you guys on what was it, February 29th? Let's see. Yeah, February 29th, okay?
Perfect.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Good night. Thank you guys. I love you. Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye.
Take care. Love you. Bye.
Love you.
See
Bye.
Drew.
Bye.
See ya.
Wow. That was great. Hold on. Let me get rid of these. Oh my God, I hope you guys like the show tonight. I am so excited about what's coming up. I had a feeling things might start changing for Paranormal Zone TV. Anyway, what I wanted to say I saw Lee Rolfe. He was on the Bender family, Hell Something. He's coming on the show. He wrote a book. Oh my God, it's going to be so good. He's coming on... let's see, he's coming March 28th, and he's going to talk about what happened here? He's going to talk about the Bender family. What a story that is. Anyway, thanks so much. Lee, there you are. No, I'm not Lee. I never heard of Randy Leach. But anyway, he's coming on the show, and it's really going to be a good topic. So guys, thanks so much for being here tonight, and thanks for my mods, Chippa, Terry, and Renee. And the Bloody Benders. Hell yeah. Hell Comes to Play. That's gonna be really good. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you really enjoyed it. My two favorite guests, and Jen is she's an unbelievable psychic. You have no idea how really, really gifted she is. Dave told me a lot about her. She used to work for the police department, and I don't know if she still does, finding missing people. So I'm really excited. So let me do some shout outs. And I want to thank you all so much for being here tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Mark Burchett, hi. Planet X Filmworks, thanks for joining us. Aaron Brody, I am Alpha. Chip and Terry, of course, my mod. Planet X, Chip and Terry. Renee, thank you, Renee, my mod. Love you guys. Tall Cross, my buddy from Scotland. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you for joining me every week from Scotland. You poor little, you stay up in the wee hours of the morning to watch the show. You're always there for me. Thank you. Anybody else that's in there? Everybody's leaving. Carmela. I know Andrew Cox was in. And thanks, Lee Ralph, for joining us tonight. That was really nice of you. You must be subscribed to my channel, I guess. Oh, guys, that's another thing. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, would you please subscribe? We're going to have some really good shows. I've got some really good shows coming up, but they're going to be good. Some new stuff coming up, okay? So please subscribe. I'd appreciate that. And let's see, anybody else that's left in the chat room? Cat Daddy Steve? Bizarre Rock Beast? Oh, I didn't answer your question. I'm sorry. Lori Miller? Anybody else? King of Hugo Mundo. Walk Away Renee. That's a song. I like that. Let's see. Tammy Heitzman. Haven't seen you for a while. And again, Lee Roth, thank you for joining us tonight. Patty Gimlin. Anybody else want to shout out? Let's see, anybody else that's still here? Oh God, Kylan. Andrew and the Gnomes Trucking Express. Andrew, you sent me an email. I saw it, but I didn't have time to respond to it. I will get to you on that. Lolly Tubi. Anybody else want to shout out? Let's see, anybody else that's still here? Oh God, Kylan. Andrew and the Gnomes Trucking Express. Andrew, you sent me an email. I saw it, but I didn't have time to respond to it. I will get to you on that. Lolly Tubi. Anybody else want to shout out? Oh, thanks, Tall Cross. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you so much. Drew Beeson is a walking encyclopedia. He knows so much. Okay. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. I love you guys. Have a great week. And let's see. I have my calendar with me for a change. Okay, February 1st, I have Lon Strickland. He has a website on phantoms and monsters. And I'm not sure which topic I'm going to work with him yet for that show. He's got a lot to offer. He knows an awful lot. I've known about him for years, and he's extremely knowledgeable. So I'll find a topic, a good one. And I have another guest on the 15th, William Hampel, but I don't have the topic. And of course, February 29th will be Drew and Serenity Jenny. Okay, I've got shows for March and April. Okay, guys, I'm gonna go now. I'm gonna go watch my show on Netflix, Power. It's really good. If you haven't seen it, it's 6 seasons, and we're hooked on it. Have a good night. I love you guys, and I'll see you on February 1st. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I love you guys. Be safe out there. I'll see you on the February 1st. Thank you so much. Love you guys. Good night. Love you.